Hello, Colin.
Hey, Abby, how
How are you? Good.
Yeah, great.
Nice to see you.
And you.
As always, thank you for picking me up from the train station.
Always welcome.
It's interesting because I met you around 2 or 3 years ago, and something that I didn't know about you is that you play golf.
Yeah, I love golf.
So since when do you play golf? Tell me a bit more about.
How do I play golf? When am I not in this building? Yeah, it's something that I don't know, I got into when my son was just after my son was born.
Okay.
Which probably everybody will say it's the worst time to get into a new sport is when you have very small children. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about golf is kind of like coffee.
Why?
Because no 2 days are the same.
Okay. Okay.
You can do it for a very long time, and you still won't master it.
Okay.
So always something new to come along and kind of change your perception, or try to figure out. Like coffee changes by the seasons. Golf, the challenge of golf changes by the seasons as well.
That's an interesting take. Do you play golf around?
So I'm a member of the local golf club here.
Okay.
I actually used to be a member of a slightly different one, slightly further up the road. But I found that I wasn't playing enough golf because I had to drive there. And with work being busy and everything else, I moved to the local golf club here.
Okay.
So when I finish work, sometimes, in the summer, Scotland's a perfect golfing country. You can finish work at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night and still sit in an hour of golf, maybe 2 hours of golf. So it's great, yeah.
That's great. I would like to start talking about you, because
Okay.
I know that you're not from Aberdeen. You're not
I'm
from
not.
this region.
No.
You're from Glasgow?
I was originally born in Glasgow, yeah.
Okay.
I was only in Glasgow for maybe 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And then my mum and dad are both teachers. My dad got a job down in the Borders.
Okay.
So I kind of feel like I'm from Selkirk.
Okay.
Just about 40 miles south of Edinburgh. From when I can remember, I lived down there.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a really beautiful part of the country to kind of be from. Very lucky to be from there. Great traditions, great people. Yeah, it's a good place to have been brought up.
And there's a funny story that you moved here because a friend of yours told you to come here, right?
Yeah,
To work.
yeah, of course. I had a friend who was up at Aberdeen University back in about 2003, I think. And I had kind of hit a bit of my life where I was a bit directionless, didn't know what I wanted to do, and he was like, "Come for a weekend, just come up, and we'll, just spend some time away from what you're doing, and sort of it'll be good fun to hang out." And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And we had a couple of nights out and a couple of we made dinner for each other and kind of spoke a lot. And he was like, "Why don't you stay? Just go find a job." And I was like, "It's mental." And he was like, "Dude, why not?" And I was like. So I went and found the first job that I could. I ended up getting a job as a kitchen porter,
Okay.
which is very low skilled. Kind of fitted right into what I was doing in my life at the time. Probably about 2 months after I got that job, the head chef came to speak to me and asked me if I fancied training as a chef. Something that I'd never really thought of, but I'd always enjoyed food. Always had a big passion for putting things inside me, especially things that taste amazing. And yeah, that kind of spurred on my real love of food and cuisine, and allowed me to kind of explore the world in a very kind of different medium.
Sorry to interrupt. When you say that you really enjoyed food, were you, before working as a chef, were you aware of the things that you were eating, or why?
To an extent, I mean, I've always enjoyed food. I maybe didn't have the biggest range of palate at the time.
Okay.
So my first head chef, Davey, he made me try something perceived I didn't like every day for like 2 years, and then kind of really helped me bridge gaps in my palate and my understanding and knowledge of food. He made me go and eat in different restaurants. He made me go and explore new chefs, and then I kind of really deepened my love for.
That's very interesting because when I speak about coffee, I think that we sometimes see it as a beverage, but I see it more as a food item, the way that we should approach it, because you need to cook coffee.
Of course.
In a sense. So it's interesting that you have this background in food, which, how many years were you working as a chef?
Ooh, so I guess from 2003, 2004 to I technically still do bits and bobs now. I wouldn't call myself a chef. I very much still love being around food. I still very much love the industry. I think having a coffee shop is just an extension of hospitality anyway. We make all of our own breads, we make all of our own sauces, and we cure meats on site. So we still very much have a hand in food production in quite a large capacity, which I love. Like I say, it's always been a passion of mine. It's not something I ever want to kind of step away from. I still do dinner parties for friends when they ask nicely enough. Which is really good fun, very stressful, and I always say after every dinner party I'm never doing another one, and I always end up doing another one. But yeah, it's great. I love the process of cooking. I love finding out where something comes from. I think that's why I gravitated so quickly to coffee. I love finding out about the people who grew. I love finding out about the artistry of bringing up something to life, and then it being handed over to somebody like me who's just taking raw materials and then trying to create something else out of those raw materials, and do it in a respectful way to show the place or to show the origin where that thing came from. Whether it's Highland game, you're cooking Highland game for people, or seafood from Scotland, or you're taking Guatemalan coffee. What you're wanting to do is to showcase that ingredient to the best of its ability, and to really make the people who are enjoying it fall in love with the area as well, and garner maybe hopefully a little bit of knowledge about that area.
That's very interesting, because when you speak, I hear craft. You are in love with the craft.
Absolutely.
How to craft beautiful dishes, and I feel that part of the craft is, yes, the craft itself, that you're talented to do it, but also the ingredients, because you cannot craft something beautiful if you don't have great ingredients.
Yeah, and for us, the most important thing about sourcing ingredients is the people who grow it and the way that it comes to us. So I always said that when I started up my coffee business, I wanted to be a values-based coffee company. So we don't just go out and buy coffee from wherever we can find it. We spend a lot of time speaking to small suppliers, small importers. It means a lot to us to bring coffee from places where it's going to do good, and from people whose life effectively depends upon the production of that, to looking after their families and looking after their villages, and then hopefully we can have a positive impact by buying as close to direct as we can through those things, so that the people at the start of it are very much a part of the process for us.
That's great. After I'm gonna stop.
I'm
gonna put that there because we're gonna speak about coffee later on. But you worked as a chef, and then you had a catering company, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How did you switch from working for someone to work for yourself? Because that's a brave leap.
Blind ignorance, I think is what we call it.
Okay.
Probably overly an overly enthusiastic attitude to not wanting days off. I think everybody in hospitality is the same. The thing about it is if you're in hospitality, if you're working in this environment, you have a very keen sense of making people happy. That's all most of us only get into the industry because we really enjoy the social aspect of producing something and for people to make memories from those things. And it's, for me, it was kind of a fluid motion for me to come out of working out. I ended up working in an oil rig offshore, which is a very different hospitality environment, but an incredibly important one for the guys or the men and women who work in that kind of offshore environment. It's probably no different to working in an army camp on the side of a battlefield somewhere, where food is the fuel that the army works off of. It's no different in an environment like an oil rig. Those 3 meals a day are the things that people look forward to. And so providing that hospitality to people is very, very important. And I find that when you're in the environment of a coffee shop, it's very important as well. Most of our customers are actually friends now. That's a very important part of creating a coffee shop for us, was to create a community space, somewhere that people can come and just enjoy themselves, and you get to know people, and you're providing great hospitality, and hopefully great products. But it's kind of, I think, why it was so easy for me to move from working for other people to working for myself.
That's beautiful, because you care. Basically, you care for the people that consume what you produce, not just delivering something beautiful, but also that whoever gets it creates a memory. I like that word. I like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. You know, we'll probably get onto it a little bit later as well about why the reasons we took over the coffee shop in Banbury are. But yeah, it's it's about having a positive impact. For instance, for example, we now have several regulars who we've known for many years now, and we've seen kids be born, we've seen people get pregnant, we've seen their children be born, all the way through to them now going to school.
Yeah.
And these kids come in and they see us every week, and it's just wonderful to watch a community around you kind of grow up and kind of move forward. Even the staff, we've had over the past 5 or 6 years, you see them from young teenagers going to university, coming home from university, turning young adults. It's one of the only places in business where you can get to have real connections like that with people and see people grow and communities grow, and it's great. I love it. Yeah.
And we can talk about
of course
the Birdhouse Cafe, because you mentioned that you used to come here before you owned it, right?
Absolutely. We've got your memories on Facebook pop up.
Yeah.
And we have memories of my kids sitting right here. Actually, at the table that you're eating, my son eating a piece of chocolate cake the size of his head.
Okay.
And so we were working somewhere else. We were just getting into our catering business at the time. We were outside catering to weddings, and the people who owned the coffee shop before came to us and said, we're thinking about selling it. It's probably nothing that you guys would be interested in, but what are your thoughts? And to be honest, it probably was 2 or 3 weeks after we had the initial conversation, because it wasn't something we thought about. It wasn't on our horizon. It wasn't something we thought. And they say never purchase a business off of emotions, and they're definitely right. But it was an absolute emotional call, and actually for us, silver linings. It was right before COVID happened, so with a lot of things with COVID, our catering company was so young, it wasn't available to get any help from the government. But because we'd taken on this place, it had a bit of help. Not very much, but a little bit, and it allowed us to kind of weather the storm. So it was our little silver lining in that kind of COVID cloud. And so it became, it's been a big part of our lives before we had owned it, and now obviously it's a massive part of our lives going forward.
I mean, I feel that sometimes we underestimate the impact that COVID had in so many businesses. Because I remember that when I was, Caribbean Goods also was very young back then. But I didn't have a brick and mortar store. Like, I didn't have a physical store, and all the grants were according to your rates that you were paying back then. So yeah.
And that's exactly like, so our outside catering business, which had I think 37 weddings booked, couldn't survive because it didn't have a physical location. It didn't rent anything. It didn't kind of own anything. It just had an order book going forward. And we were very keen to make sure we keep deposits from people, everybody got paid back, and we tried to do things the right way then. But because we had this place, we were able to get some form of grants funding and kind of get the business to kind of muddle its way through, very much muddled its way through for 2 years.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think my accountant probably told me a few times, why are you doing this? What accountants now.
We're recording an episode here. It's a beautiful place. It's working. So KP, chef, catering company, coffee shop owner.
Yeah.
And then you get trapped in Australia.
Yeah.
Right?
So
like the plot twist, right?
The plot twist that nobody saw coming.
Yeah.
So my sister got married in March 2020. Wow. Yeah. It's actually, so as we record, I was just saying to you in the car, 2 days ago, 6 years ago,
yes,
my sister got married. So happy anniversary, Carrie and Will. So we had gone, as you would, to Australia for a wedding of a family member. It's very far, so we had booked a month-long trip on the back end of our kind of adventure to Australia. And on the Sunday, so our sister went on Saturday, and on the Sunday, my brother-in-law's friends, who were all from New Zealand, were scrambling to leave the country that day, because they were told if we weren't in by midnight that night, they had to go into 2-week quarantine. So they were flying, they were leaving, they were just dropping and running out of Australia, getting on any flight to any part of New Zealand, because as long as they were on one of the islands, they were okay. They didn't have to go into quarantine, so for working and stuff, it made a massive difference for them. I said to my mum, I was like, Mum, should we just fly home? My mum said, Colin, why are you worried? We've got this beautiful trip planned. Remember, we've had SARS, we've had lots of things coming out in the past 10 to 20 years. None of them have come to anything. She said, go on your trip, it'll be fine. And I was like, you sure, Mum? She said, Colin, go on your trip, it'll be fine. 4 days later, 5 days later, our friend who lives in Sydney, works for a big bank, phoned us and said, guys, you need to get back into New South Wales. We've just been told at the bank to bring all of our, anyone who works for us who's not currently in New South Wales and who lives here, bring them home. So we had to hightail it to Brisbane Airport, and we got on the last flight back to New South Wales, but then we were stuck there for 3.5 months.
Okay.
So it was kind of crazy, but that's kind of another silver lining in the story is, you know, Australians' coffee culture is, you know, a very, very different one to what we experienced in 2020 in this country. You know, I had very lucky to have a little coffee shop, which, you know, I was very new to having a coffee shop. I'd only owned one for about 6 weeks before I went to Australia. And I got to spend a lot of time going and buying coffees and chatting to the people who worked in the coffee shop, which was well established, had been there for like 12 years. And roasted their own coffee on site. And so in these chats and these kind of, you know, going and picking up the morning coffee, got chatting to the owners. So, gosh, you roast your coffee here. I was like, so, you know, me being as ignorant as I was of coffee at the time, I was like, so, you know, what's the process? Do you just, and he was like, oh no, it's like different from everywhere in the world. I was probably terrible for the fact that I was used to Starbucks coffee, and like, you know, my main go-to was like a caramel latte, lots of caramel, or a mocha, and I still love a mocha. I still think they have a place in the market. I'm not so sure about caramel lattes, but it was just, yeah, it really changed my opinion. And you know, when I talk about Australian coffee, as I've spoken to you before about it, it's the consistency of shop-to-shop coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you go into 5 different coffee shops and order 5 cappuccinos, you'll get the same drink with a different style of coffee in it. And I think that changed my opinion of what coffee shops should be.
Okay.
And then coming back to this country, you know, that was really our goal from day one of coming home, was we want to build that consistency into our coffee shop. You know, we want people to come here and know that, you know, you're going to get a consistent style of drink, and our drinks are going to be the thing that you should order, or the way that we perceive it to be ordered. And so, yeah, that was very important to us coming back. Coffee in this country has changed massively in the last 6 years. You know, when you look back at, you know, it was very difficult to find a specialty coffee shop out west of Edinburgh, Glasgow 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Now you've got them in Dundee, you've got one of the best coffee shops on the planet in Inverness.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes.
But all these things have popped up in the last few years in the industry in Scotland. You know, I'd imagine the Independent Coffee Guide 6 years ago was about that in Scotland, and now it's an amazing book. It's such a good resource, and yeah, I think it's a really exciting industry to be a part of now, actually, in Scotland.
When you were a chef, when you were a chef, so do you have some water though?
Some more.
I'm gonna cut.
Yeah, don't worry.
Thank you. I'm just gonna put it somewhere that can hit.
Oh yeah, just put it.
Yeah, I'll put it here. Sorry. When you were a chef, how do you sell coffee? Because you worked for 20 plus years in the catering and a chef, but what was coffee there? Was that existent, non-existent, or?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you know, I probably went through 5 or 6 coffee trainings, barista coffee trainings in different restaurants and hotels, and they were all the same. There's very little information on dosing. There's very little information on different styles of coffee, and there was a very kind of, to say lax attitude, I will say a lax attitude into, you know, forming the coffee and recipeing out for the cup that you were using. It was just a case of, if somebody wants a flat white, just put a little bit less foam on it. But it was the same size as a latte, it was the same size as a cappuccino. You know, remember the old style latte with the big fan glass, and you try and pour it over the back of the spoon to get that little level in the middle. So very traditional, sort of lavazas, you know, that kind of old school Italian dark roasted coffee. I like to call it hotel coffee now.
Okay.
And you know, it is very much of a flavour profile. And it's that old school Nescafe flavour profile that everybody kind of remembers from their childhood. I think everyone perceives that to be what coffee smells like when it's roasting because of the advertisement that's gone around it. And the first time you roast coffee, you go, that's not what it smells like at all.
Exactly.
You need to really burn it to get it to smell like that. But yeah, so that was kind of my experience of coffee before. So it wasn't in any way a bad experience. It was like, it was built for the marketplace that it was in at the time. You know, there are still companies who are very big in this country who do exactly the same thing as they were doing 20 years ago, and they're still doing exactly the same thing now. Whereas coffee, in my opinion, and definitely in the small independents, has moved on leaps and bounds. Still got ways to go. I still don't think coffee is as front and centre as it should be in a lot of coffee shops, but I don't think that's more than 5 or 6 years away from, you know, it being very much a, you know, the leader of the pack in terms of coffee quality will be the number one concern for customers in this country. It's getting that way because of the hard work being done. I mean, the amount of inspirational work that's being done in this industry at the moment. You know, young people opening great coffee shops all over the place. Young roasters kind of coming out now, and yeah, being able to work off the experience of the people that have come before you, I think it's a really positive place to be.
And so you just finishing the story, you own the shop, you go to Australia, you love coffee, you come back, you have a coffee shop, and then you decide to roast coffee.
Yeah.
You get a roaster in?
I did get a roaster in. So, yeah, I've always loved the process. Like I said, I always loved knowing where my food came from. I always loved the process of getting the food into the restaurant or into the kitchen and the production of that. So you take, you know, your braised beef. It's a different cut of beef. You cook it low and slow for a long time to get a product which matches the beef that comes in. So the cut of beef that comes in, you braise it out, and you get a product at the end, which has to be looked after a certain way. It's very similar with coffee. You know, you get a super high grown coffee from Ethiopia. It's naturally processed. You want to roast it quite light and let all those florals come out. You get something that you get Robusta, which is much lower grown. It's a bit woodier. You want to roast it dark to get the best out of that product. It's very, so I find coffee very enjoyable in that sense. I love getting the samples in. I love roasting them a few different ways in our little roaster, on the sample roaster, and then seeing what works best for that product, and then taking that to the large production roaster and trying to recreate, you know, those flavour profiles in the production roaster. For me, that's, yeah, I'm a bit geeky in that.
Yeah, no, I mean, welcome. I mean, I'm pretty sure that everyone that is seeing this episode is very geeky with coffee, otherwise they wouldn't have been until here.
Yeah.
I have some questions that I've written down for you, but I'm pretty sure we answered a couple of them already.
Yeah.
But working in kitchens has a rhythm. It's very fast paced.
It's very fast paced.
Do you think it's similar to coffee?
In terms of the coffee shop and a kitchen are like the same thing.
Okay.
You know, it's hospitality.
Yeah.
It's all, you know, the back and the front have to be a team. You have to work together. The rhythm in a coffee shop, you know, if you go to a restaurant, actually everything happens in the back. But in a coffee shop, a lot of it happens right here. You know, it's a very interesting model where it's dynamically similar to just having a kitchen out front.
Okay.
Because like this is your stove.
Yeah.
You know, this is your work, and you're doing everything in front of the client effectively. So it's like being working in an open kitchen.
Okay.
So the rhythm I find is very similar. It's about keeping your head cool. It's about smiling a lot. It's, you know, having fun with customers.
Yeah.
And yeah, just if the team works well together and you get into that kind of rhythm where everything clicks and works really well, it's a wonderful place to be. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but hey, those are just fun challenges that you get every day in the industry. Yeah, I think from that perspective of, you know, how does a kitchen work, how does a coffee shop work, or working in coffee, when it comes to the production of coffee in terms of cooking, I would say that coffee is much more considered and slower process.
Okay.
You know, when it comes to, if you want to cook something and taste it, you pretty much do it. It's done. If you want to taste coffee, it takes days.
Yes.
Sometimes it takes weeks to find out what coffee's going to do. So you have to be very patient with coffee. You have to be a little bit more in tune with the environment that you're working in terms of your humidities and the ambient temperatures. You can drop beans into a roaster where your roaster's sitting at 220 degrees, but that coffee's maybe been sitting at 10 degrees, and that throws everything off a little bit. Whereas if you come in and it's cold in the morning, in the winter in Scotland, that coffee might be at 4 degrees. And so you have to, you know, I find it very much like baking more than chefing.
Okay.
So you have to be a little bit more in tune with the atmospherics that are going on in the business. In terms of how the coffee's reacting, is the business a bit more damp than today? Is it, you know, so you're checking things all the time. So it's a bit more slow paced and a bit more considered, I think, roasting coffee than chefing, than cooking, if you will. Sorry.
This is fascinating because I've never interviewed someone that has a food background and now is transitioning to coffee. But I mean, you're not transitioning; you still do the food.
I think it's very. I mean, it's very similar.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, coffee is a natural product. It changes all the time. You know, it's season to season. You know, you probably find that, you know, when you have a slightly worse growing season, it does massively affect the product that comes out, and how things are sorted in the farms, and, you know, the quality of production to speciality as opposed to C grade. You know, everything makes a little difference along the supply chain and along the line. Excuse me. So yeah, it's a slower process, but it's a very interesting process.
I'm gonna come back to the questions, and I'm gonna be asking a bit of everything. But we answered about the COVID question. We answered what we do in Australia. I want to know. So you come back, start roasting. You meet Gareth, right? We haven't spoke about Gareth.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about it. It's a shame. So when I came back, I've known Gareth for a very long time. Yeah. He was a barman in a bar when I was young. When I was younger. I probably was never young. But yeah, Gareth is a cocktail barman.
Okay.
Gareth loves process. He loves.
You met him here in Aberdeen?
I met him in Aberdeen. He used to work he was a bar manager at a place called Dusk.
Yeah.
So Gareth is a manager at a place called Dusk, which is very, very well thought of cocktail bar. It's still open. Gareth very quickly realised that if you wanted to live the life you wanted to live, he had to find a job which paid him a lot more money than working in a bar.
Okay.
And now he's a very successful property guy. But I mean, through COVID, you know, I was in Australia. Gareth was on the phone to me every other day. This is what the government are offering. This is what's happening. Let me know if you need to fill any forms for you. Like, he's a very, very good friend. And he plays golf, and we both play golf. So there's a lot of crossover in our social and working lives. But Gareth's very much a product guy. You know, he loves. You know, when me and Gareth first met, we used to sit for hours on a quiet Tuesday night in the bar, discuss ingredients that would make changes to cocktails and how we could elevate the way that things tasted. Could I take things that he knew about cocktails and flavour combinations and bring that back to my chefing job, and then vice versa. So we always had a really interesting partnership in terms of how we look at food and how we look at products. But getting back to what we were talking about and how did Gareth come into the coffee company, I very quickly realised that I could get a coffee roaster, but I needed somewhere to roast it. And I was racking my brain, and I was chatting to him, and I was like, oh, I wonder if Gareth's got a random garage somewhere in his property portfolio that he's not using. And so I phoned him and I said, do you have time for a chat and a walk? And he was like, yeah, let's grab a coffee at Park Shop and we'll go for a wander and have a chat. And I was like, sounds great. So we took his dog Layla and the three of us went for a walk. It's supposed to be a 20-minute catch-up. It ended up being a 2.5-hour conversation, and at the back end of that long walk was kind of very much in its infancy. I had a place where I could roast coffee, where I burnt a lot of coffee. And I managed to find a guy to give me a coffee roaster and some beans that I could rent, and yeah, it was, you know, like I say, I think I was a year and a half before anybody apart from myself and Gareth tasted any of the coffee that was coming out of the shed.
Okay, so you were just roasting for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It was very much experimental phase.
Okay.
It was, you know, I'll be honest with you, this is how little I knew about coffee roasting at the time. I'd never heard of artisan.
Okay.
I'd heard of logging, so I used to write down 2-minute intervals, everything that was happening in the roaster,
Okay.
the temperature, and I tried to work out rate of rise from all of that. I learned how the roaster effectively worked thermally,
Okay.
so I knew that if I just started it and threw coffee beans in when the roaster first got to temperature, so if I got the roaster to 220 degrees, just from turning the burners on and threw coffee into it, it would drop too far and crash. And I would have to put loads of energy in, and the coffee beans had way too much energy at the back end of the roast. It was almost uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Like I say, I burned a lot of coffee back in
Yeah.
the day. And so, just things like that, you know, it was basically like, you know, I probably equated to, you know, when if you go back 40 years before computers were ever in coffee, how people figured out how to roast coffee then. And I kind of did it that way.
Yeah.
You know, I've had no formal training, I've had no formal instruction really at all in coffee. Just what I could kind of piece together from YouTube, which is a lot of people do them on like little beamers and stuff, and doesn't really equate to a 5 kilo roaster.
Yeah, no.
So I don't know. I mean, I still have so much to learn, you know, and so much to kind of get through. But it's an interesting, it's a good fun way to process.
This is fascinating because you were doing the coffee shop, you were learning how to roast at the same time.
Yeah.
But I love the approach, the again craft, like how you approach it with, you want to master roast as much as you
Yeah, of course.
because I think that's very important, because at the end of the day people overestimate how hard it is to roast coffee. I think people, they just think chop the green beans in, come brown back, and that's it.
I've got a computer here.
Yes, exactly.
It can't be that difficult.
And it's not that way. So yeah, I mean, did you knew what you were getting into?
No.
No. No. Yes.
I just thought, you know what, this sounds like something that might be quite fun. I love a rabbit hole. I wonder where this little rabbit hole will take me. And yeah, I just jumped in with both feet, and I met amazing people. I don't get out of my little sphere too often because, you know, it's one of those things where we also run a little coffee shop in a very small town in sort of northeast Scotland. So it's pretty busy, and you know, but it's very small, so it looks after me and my wife pretty well. But it's not somewhere that you go, I can have 5 or 6 members of staff and sort of, you know, I don't need to be at work every day. I very much need to be at work every day. I'm very focused all the time, which is great. But yeah, so I kind of, roasting for me is still a bit of a side hustle.
Okay.
We have some great clients. We have, you know, some really, very lucky. We have some very, what's the word I'm looking for? We have some very, you know, good regulars. So, you know, they come and buy our coffee in kilos and in 250 grams, and they'll buy whatever we, you know, they take away bags of whatever we buy in to roast. Even kind of more interesting coffees that sometimes I like to buy that, you know, possibly, you know, not to everybody's taste. I think that's a great thing about coffee, you know, diving into different processes. Yeah, coffee industry is a very, very interesting place to be, and a very difficult place to master.
Why difficult?
I think probably because, like I say, it's seasonal. You know, so you think you know, and you think you've mastered
until the next season.
And then, but then you bring in another bean from a different part of the world, and the process starts again. You know, you've got to be very process oriented in this industry. That's probably like golf. You know, you stand up to the first tee and you think it's all going to be good today. Everything worked really well 2 days ago in training, and you go, oh, no, it didn't work quite as well as it did the last time. Why not? And then you're trying to like figure it out. So yeah, it's good fun.
Do you remember the first roast you were really proud of? You were saying, I nailed it.
Do you know what? I do. And it was a Blue Ayarza.
Okay.
And I just remember cupping it after about 2 days after I'd roasted it, I'm thinking, that's really balanced. The cup looks good. And I made it for my wife, and she was like, she's very supportive, so she was probably lying at the time. But she said, that's better than the stuff we're buying in at the moment. And I was like, I love the coffee roaster that we were buying in from at the time. And I still think they're one of the best ones I've had. So I don't think she was telling me the whole truth. But yeah, that Blue Yarza was made a really fine cup of coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, very interesting. I that was the one where I was super happy at the back end of the roast. I hit my turning point where I thought I was going to. My drying period was pretty much within 20 seconds of where I thought it was going to end, and I managed to get my development time. So initially, remember I said about having too much energy running into the back end of the roast. That was when I really got the handle of turning everything down through the back end to get my development times to be stretched to where I wanted them to be without overcooking the beans at the same time. So yeah, that Blue Yarza was a good roast.
And do you think that's because you had the skills, like you were getting better at roasting?
100%.
Or do you think the beans also help?
In that instance, I think that was more my skills were improving.
Okay.
I was learning more about the machine I was using. I was learning more about how beans react to the different temperatures and the inputs that I'm putting into the coffee machine. I'm still fully aware that you can get great beans and make a real mess of them.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Do occasionally still do it. But yeah, I think obviously great beans are, you get big chunky beans. You gave me a Popian Pacamara last year, and that's the easiest coffee I've ever roasted.
Okay.
It was so easy to roast
because
it was thermally massive beans. They took on their, they just stretch out the roast, they're beautiful part, and they make roasting coffee very, very easy because they're very thoroughly stable in the roaster. Little beans are very difficult because they will never run away.
Yeah.
And naturals can be quite tricky because they love a bit of thermal runaway at the end of a roast too. But yeah, I just think great beans make a difference when you know what you're doing. I don't think in the instance of if you don't know what you're doing, it doesn't matter what you're roasting. So yeah, my first roast I really kind of got right. I think it was more to do with me getting better at roasting. And I still am better this month than I was last month. I'm 100 times better than I was this time last year.
Okay.
Hopefully be 100 times better this time next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's great. And do you remember the first roast that went completely wrong?
Very first one I ever did.
Okay.
And you mean like the first roast that you want the most recent roast?
No, that's great. Let's talk about the first one. Cause
the first one was... the first one I took from a cooking perspective, right?
Okay.
I looked at everything, coffee started changing colour, I had loads of heat going in. I still had loads of heat going in. Coffee was starting to turn. I was like, and I turned my back for maybe a minute, and it was gone.
Okay.
And it was like,
okay,
proper like, Ucha boy. Now that happened to me 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
When I was doing a roast for a client. Now I had less heat going in, but I don't know what happened. I think I just got distracted for a minute. And yeah, I literally came back through. I think, do you know what? I think I nipped away because I was like, the coffee's in a really good place. I can go and put out the bags, ready for me to drop, cool, and then start bagging. And I went through, put the bags out, and by the time I came back, I was like, oh, what does that say? 2:35.
Yeah.
Oh no. I set off all the smoke alarms in the building.
Okay. That's a great story though, because I think that, and a question for you, what do you do with that coffee? You set it aside?
To be fair, that coffee goes away.
Okay.
It just, it's not what the client wants,
Yeah.
so what's the point in giving it to them?
Exactly, yes.
And it's way darker than we'd like our profiles to be in here.
But this what you're saying is gold. So because whoever is listening to this episode, they'll see that you care and that everything that they buy and consume from here has a quality control.
Absolutely.
And you're the last line of defense. But I mean, we did one, and the guy that exported did one, and it was just the whole quality control. So whoever gets beans from here, they know that you
we
care.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and that comes back to our our initial process. So I had a coffee in this week from a supplier, and you would think on the basis of what it was a Peruvian bourbon coffee, and it was a washed coffee, and you would think, do you know what? Not much can go wrong there. It's a beautiful bean, it's nice and big. You got to get consistent heat throughout, and I sampled it, and like 12.5% of the roasted coffee in my 50-gram sample was Quakers.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I'm like, this is not a cheap coffee to buy.
Yeah.
And from that small sample, I'm like, I lost all confidence in purchasing that coffee from that later on.
Yeah.
And that's part of the quality control is I got the Quakers out and I cut the coffee. It's beautiful, but the risk for my size of company is too high at that level. We can't have that margin of error in the beans because we'd have to strip too much of it out for us to then make profit. So like our quality control process runs from the start to the finish of the, we're still going to get some Quakers here and there. We try and pick them out as much as we can. Ideally we would have a colour sorter. We're a few £1,000s away from one of those at this precise moment in time. It would be a great addition to the team, but one day.
That's interesting because again, quality control. But I like what I'm hearing after all this is that whoever drinks a cup of coffee from here or buys beer from you, there's a lot of quality control.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with any part of our business, I was doing the importance of hospitality. I think we oftentimes forget in this industry. We get very proud of what we do, but we sometimes think we're the most important people involved in the process, when the most important person is the person who's enjoying what you make.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, and I doubt I'm not generalising in any way, shape or form, I think people in this industry open businesses to make money, and I've probably been guilty of that in the past myself as well. I've opened a company to make money, and you very quickly realise that unless people are enjoying what you do, there's no point because they're just not going to come back. So you have to switch that mindset from, you still need to make money, don't get me wrong, like we're not, not here to just give stuff away and hopefully people are smiling when they leave the shop. But we have to put the customer at the forefront of everything that we do. We have to really kind of put ourselves in their shoes and want to be happy with everything that we're doing, so the customer then hopefully enjoys everything that we do.
Looking at your history, you did a lot of physical work at the very beginning of your life, KP, then chef.
Yeah.
Do you think that affects the way that you run a company?
Yeah, I'm probably a little too harsh on some of our younger, especially my kids when they work for me, because it was so physically demanding for me when I was younger. My first job that I ever had, I used to peel and chip potatoes in the local chip shop.
Yeah.
And then do the dishes on a Friday and Saturday night, which was very labour intensive work, but it was great fun. And actually the lady who owned the chip shop, the family who owned it, Ida, she kind of based out all my love of Italian food, because she didn't want her family working in the chip shop eating fish and chips or every night, so she would come and cook every night, every Friday, Saturday. She'd come to the chip shop and cook in the kitchen. She'd make fresh pasta, she'd make sauces from scratch. And I learned a lot in making gnocchis from her, and it's a great education.
And that's beautiful. I mean, every time we speak about something else, what I keep hearing is the love of food, which is lovely, because I mean that's what you expect, right? When you're working with a coffee company or with whatever company that is involved with food, you want that level of care, I think. And well, my last question that I have here for you, Colin, and then we can jump to yours, because I know you have some questions for me. But is when someone drinks a coffee here in Aberdeen, what do you think they're experiencing without realizing? Do you think there's something that they do not know that it's happening behind the cup, or do you think?
I think and I think that so if I go around to the places that I enjoy drinking coffee, there is always a story behind the coffee. And I think that is the thing that doesn't get told well enough.
Okay.
And I think they we're the same. We have some stuff up. We try and have some bits and bobs, and if people ask us about the coffee, it's a great thing to tell them. But that's the good thing about coffee. The kind of cool thing about coffee is there's always a story behind the beans, and making those stories more prevalent, getting people more interested in where the product comes from, that it's not just a commodity, that there are actual human beings at the start of this chain who are, you know, putting a lot of effort and a lot of time into cultivating and looking after these plants, and that, you know, in some cases, like, you know, hoonbats that we purchase from you, the part of the reason that we love hoonbats is the numbers, the smallholder farmers that comes from, the fact that they're able to club together to make a product, to bring it to the market and be paid, and then that has a place to go and get into the supply chain. You know, telling those stories, I think, is super important, and I think that's the one thing that through most coffee shops, and I don't mean to be like, you know, that I'm not saying that, you know, people do in their own ways do try and do as good a job as they can. I think that's where, as coffee professionals in the specialty industry, we need to be very focused going forward, is telling the stories of the people who grew the coffee, so that the general public in every country that consumes gets very in tune with, you know, what's happening around the world and gets to know about the places that their product comes from. It's very easy for us in this part of the world, if you eat beef,
yeah,
if you walk for 2 minutes,
yeah,
you can find the beef, because it's just wandering in the fields. And so you can see how that product is made, you can meet the people that make the product, whereas I think when there's a lot of products that come from overseas, because coffee's never growing in Scotland,
yeah,
as much as we would love it to, it's just not happening.
yeah,
And so it's, you know, people in this country are never going to find out about the coffee farmer unless the people selling the coffee to them tells them that story.
yeah,
and does everybody want to know? Probably not.
yeah.
But for the people who want to know, I think it's super important that we have the ability to tell those stories and to hopefully tell them well.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any questions for me, or do you?
I mean, the one thing that I want to kind of ask you is, when you go to buy coffee, so when you go in country, when you go to Guatemala, because, you know, that's where you come from, it's your homeland.
Yeah.
When you work with coffee roasters, how do you want the story told? You know, how would you like the story of where this coffee comes from, how it's produced? You know, how is that story in your head? How is it told day to day by people who, like me, who make the coffee?
Yeah.
And
That's a great question, because when I started Caribbean Goods, I always saw it as a connection. To be fair, I don't sell coffee. If you just think about it, I sell logistics, I sell financing, I sell storage, but they produce the coffee and you guys roast it and you guys serve it. I believe that we're a link between you guys and them, all the coffee farmers, so they're doing all the hard work. So the answer to your question will be depending on how each of those farmers wants to transmit their story. Because I met one like 3 years ago. This person, he lost his wife, and when I said, can I write your name, can I tell people about you, how they grew up in this farm, they farmed the fields for 40 plus years, he said, I don't want my name out there. I don't want people to pity me in any way. And I thought, that's interesting, and I thought that was going to be a great story, but he doesn't want to share that to the world. And I respect that. So it will be depending on each farmer. What do they want to talk about? There's farms that have been there for 100 plus years. There's farms that have been there for 20. Each of them has their own uniqueness. So I think that's the important, like if I were to speak with a roaster, I will encourage them to know who they buy coffee from. For instance, Kumbats, the guys that you use, they are a very interesting collaboration, because around the 1960s, 1970s, there were some European priests that traveled to Guatemala and set themselves in the mountains close to the Cuchumatanes. So when they were there, they encouraged the small producers to get together and they say, hey guys, you don't need to be suffering that much. Let's remember that right now Guatemala has a 40% of illiteracy, so that means that 4 out of 10 adults, they cannot read or write. So there's a lot of people with indigenous roots that they do not speak Spanish very well because it's not their first language. They struggle to read and write. So they got abused for far too long from the system. So when these priests come and get them together, they form legal entities, and the legal entity function as a shield, because you're not alone. Even though you produce 50 kilograms of coffee, you're not exposed to whatever is happening to you. So after getting together, they realized that they could also get together with other smallholder groups, and they become a federation. Whenever you have a federation of small producers, that means that all the money that goes to the federation gets split among the federation in same percentages. So that's lovely, because when I saw that, I thought, well, that's brilliant, because you have the power of a mega private farm competing with thousands of small producers that got together that can actually deliver. These federations start buying dry mills, start exporting, getting all the certifications. And when we speak about Humba specifically, we curate the lots. So what you do about food, we do that with the green coffee at Origin. So there's 3 curators at Origin and myself here that we're curating the lots every year. As you know, seasonal coffee changes year after year. And what we do is, imagine you have all the country in Guatemala. We have certain regions that we know that are going to score really well. And when we get the samples from those, we select the best tasting one that we can find that year. And that one is Humbats. So I can tell you about the small producers that produce Humbats that year, but I can also tell you that they may or may not be the same ones next year. Because the idea is to curate the lots to bring highest tasting, beautiful coffee to the market, but also give the money back to them. And since we funnel it through the federation, everyone gets the same money back. So that's beautiful. So when I spoke with them in my trip in January, saying, what do you guys want me to tell? What do you guys want me to show? I mean, all of them, because there's so many small producers, they each of them have their own perspective. One of them said, can I have a picture? Can there be a picture of me there? I said, sure. So there's a picture of the person in the website. There's others that they wanted me to talk about how last year when the prices went up, what they did with the profits is they bought a car dealership. So they're trading cars now because they thought, and they rightly thought, that the commodity was going to crash at some point. But now they can actually make money on a regular basis by trading cars. I spoke with Ingeniero Jesus, which is the technician of all the small producers, and what he's doing, which I found fascinating, he's teaching them to be more than just farmers. Historically, if you have 6 sons, you were splitting this shop in 6 pieces. And then you have 6 owners, and they have 3 sons each, and then you have 18 people running the whole thing. So instead of splitting the land in that many pieces, Ingeniero Jesus is pushing them to become, phone technicians, wet mill builders, because the problem was that you had a small plot of land with 100 farmers and no one can fix a motorcycle, and you have 1,000 motorcycles there, and the only person can do it is in a village that is 2 hours away from them. So when you see all of that, I think it's just creating the exposure, creating the fact that these people are doing their best. They are incredible people. They're happy, they're generous, they are welcoming, and I encourage you to come.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's my message. Try to understand who are they, why they do what they do. Because, for instance, you spoke about a Peruvian wash coffee. Great. And I don't know how much you know about the person that produced that coffee. And I think that's for me, that's what makes me tick, to get those stories out there. So I love to hear that you care that much about the process, where the coffee comes from, why it's coming that way. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's just a cup of coffee, but if we manage to share it with care, it's going to reach people in more than just a beverage. It's going to be more a memory, like you said.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant. I guess another one for me, kind of, we were talking about the Q grading side of the coffee. So can you explain to us a little bit about, because a lot of our customers won't have a clue what a Q grader is. They won't understand the process of getting coffee in Guatemala. It comes off the tree. What a natural process is. Would you be able to just give us a quick, brief overrun of coffees on the tree? How do we get it to me green?
Okay. So coffee is a cherry. That's how I start. And what we drink is the seed of the cherry. So I tell people, imagine a grape. If you peel the outer layer of a grape, it's sticky. The same. If you peel the outer layer of a coffee cherry, it's sticky. So coffee, most of the coffee in Latin America gets washed. So they peel the outer layer, they wash all the stickiness out of it, and they dry it under the sun. Now you get parchment. Parchment is coffee before it gets milled. Now coffee comes from a plant. So the sizes inside of the plant vary because plants do not produce 3 millimeter long cherries. They just do random different sizes. So when you get the parchment coffee, there's big machines that break it and they sort it. And they sort it in size, density, and color. And that's when you get beautiful milled coffee. The dry mills, they remove, I can get very technical, but you can remove things like smaller beans, you can remove things like Quakers, you can remove things like dark beans, which affect the cup profile. So in a very simplistic way, you get a tree that produces a cherry. The cherry gets peeled, gets washed if it's a wash process, dried under the sun, whole, classified in density, color, and size, and then it gets exported to here. The Q grading system is actually a method to assess the coffee and internationally. We're gonna score the coffee with a number. Personally, I believe that coffee, there's a new method, which is a CBA, that has more of a quality, like a more of a personal approach to it rather than a judgy, like you're scoring 87. Scoring coffees for me is dangerous because you don't see what happened behind the score. You can deliver a beautiful scoring coffee in an unethical field, or you can deliver a bad scoring coffee in a beautiful environment, healthy environment. So that's exactly why we curate a lot, because if we were to buy from the same people over and over and over again, if the quality drops, you wouldn't be happy with it. So the idea is we're gonna work with people that all the profit stays among them. We're gonna get those best tasting ones for you to be always having that special micro lots feel. So yeah, Q grader, going back to the topic, is a way to assess the coffee international. So you can assess the same coffee in Guatemala and in Scotland, and you can judge it in the similar parameters. Yeah. So the coffee can be compared. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Another one would be, because of your experience of Guatemala, the coffee industry in Guatemala, could you just, we're in a bit of a changing world at the moment. Coffee is obviously doing some crazy things, but we're in a fluctuating price market. Could you give us a little brief outline of the challenges that are being faced by farmers in Guatemala at the moment?
I spoke with a trader 2 weeks ago, and what he said to me is farmers are sitting on their coffee. It's like sitting, like physically sitting on your coffee. I was like, what's that mean? And they're not selling it because last year they got paid for $20 a pound, and this year we're talking right now. Today is $2.85. They're saying no. It's an interesting one because this year Guatemala has been very cold. It was really, really cold for the longest time. February was ridiculously cold when it shouldn't be cold. And what that translates is the tree, the coffee cherry does not mature fully. It stays there, but farmers need to pick up the cherries. And I heard from a farmer last week as well, and the owner is saying, we have harvested 75% of specialty coffee. We cannot hold it anymore because otherwise the coffee dies in the trees. Let's get it all. Yeah. So specialty coffee is very complicated because, again, if you just focus on the number, you can get a micro piece of a farm, really high end. But then the 99% of the other farm, you don't know what's happening. So farmers are sitting on their coffee because they don't want to get paid less than what they got paid last year. Or they want to get at least something closer to it. I did spoke about this a couple of years ago. I said high prices are not always a good thing. They all come with pros and cons. One of the cons is that now farmers are just not giving the coffee. It was hard for me to get coffee this year. Very, very hard. Because either I was paying X or I was not getting nothing. So yes, that's something that's happening right now in the fields. commodity price, even though we do not want to admit it, it's linked to specialty coffee.
Of course.
We have this dream of specialty coffee being, we forget about commodity and that's it. But I mean, even last year when the prices were so high in the commodity, I had these really famous farmers offer me coffee slightly more than they were always doing, and I was like, oh, what happened with fixing the price, forgetting about the commodity? So yeah.
I mean, everybody sees an opportunity, an issue. You know, I found it a very interesting couple of years in terms of volatility from my perspective. Trying to figure out how you purchase coffee as such a small business, which partly why you buy so much from yourself, because we know the prices, we know when we're saying to you at the start of the year, okay, we're going to go in at this price, we know we're going to use for the year, and that's why we stuck by Hoonbats for so long, because the way you purchase it and the way you can buy it from you kind of works out for us, keeps our coffee a very consistent price throughout the year, which we very much appreciate. Kind of going forward, you know, do you have a crystal ball? What's going to happen? You know, would you say that, you know, for the consumer over the next 2 years, that they can expect the price of a latte to drop?
I saw there's two answers to that. I interviewed Hugo Maur, which is a famous economist in Guatemala, and he said to me something that stuck with me. He said the nature of commodities that grow from earth is that they go up and then they crash, and then they go up and then they crash, because it's supply and demand. I believed, and I saw it this time, a lot of farmers, when they saw the hike in price, they just planted more coffee. And the only thing that I'm thinking is it's going to bounce. Because if everyone is planting coffee, you're going to have an oversupply of coffee at some point, and it's going to drop.
Yeah. I mean, what's about 5 years from planting a coffee plant to getting a coffee back?
Now, I do need to say that also, and that was the second part of the answer, the planting, the harvesting is shifted with reality, because it takes some months for the coffee to come here. So something that I'm buying, I mean, I'm going to start paying for coffee in April, but I'm going to get it in May, June. That's 2 months facing. The whole planet is buying coffee that we don't have yet.
Yes.
So that even though you have a crash, it's not instantaneous. You don't get the discount in the moment. You get it in the future. It's going to come if the farmers deliver as well, if they want to give coffee cheaper. So I think there's going to be a dip, but it's not going to be dramatic, because also if you see the price of a latte, the expensive thing of a coffee shop is not the coffee per se, it's rent, it's wages, and you see this government putting minimum wage up, you see rates going high, you see inflation happening. I don't think latte should be cheaper.
No.
I think we should all, just because at the same time, if you see price of coffee, they were very similar to where 30 years ago. And I don't know of anything on this planet that is priced similar to what it was 30 years ago. So I don't know.
It's interesting, you know, from us, we don't think about, from a consumer's point of view in this country, we do not think about the price that coffee costs back at the farm.
Yeah.
We very much have an intrinsic knowledge of something that we use every day, which is milk.
Yeah.
So people in this country can understand why something costs what it does, because the milk price, you know, is a certain amount. You go to the shops, you know how much it costs to buy 2 litres of milk. And that has steadily creeped on everybody in the last 20 years. The people don't really probably appreciate where coffee is in terms of a green product, of a commodity product that it gets to its source.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear about the journey that starts on the other side of the world, in a very small part of the world as well. I think people underestimate just how small the land mass that grows all the coffee that we all drink around the world. You know, it's a very, very thin region of the planet where we have the right growing conditions, and you know, coffee can be made and produced, and
And also I think they underestimate, and one of the questions I did to this economist was, what's the largest assumption that a UK citizen can do of Guatemala that is not there? He said that we don't have a government that is looking for us, because we don't, like most of the people in Guatemala they don't pay tax, not because they don't want to, but because they get one income a year.
Mhm.
While here you get paid monthly, and you pay taxes monthly, you get a better government that can deliver back to you. In Guatemala, we don't have infrastructure, we don't have roads. So even though you grow coffee in the top of Ben Nevis, you have a guy physically going up there, carrying the sacks in their bag down every single day. So it's hard work. So we have very thin where the coffee grows, in remote places in that thin area. So yes, it's an interesting crop. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, part of the journey we're on here is finding out about every facet of the coffee and where it comes from and how it's produced and how it's looked after, and it's just been it's an interesting trip that it takes.
Yeah.
Perfect. The side of a hill, 2,500 feet or 2,500 meters in the air to
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll show you a video where you can see they carry the coffee in the back, but they have a rope and put it in their forehead. So with their forehead, they're pushing it down, and they go into. I was falling without weight. I was like, I don't know how you do it with 100 pounds in your back. So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Perfect. Do you have any other questions, Colin?
I think that's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, mate.
It was lovely talking to
nice
you.
to chat as well, yeah.
Yes, and thank you for making this industry a bit better. Thank you very much.
Well, we do.
Yes.
I don't know if we do, but yeah.
No, thank you.